Alright, hello, I'm back. I've decided to start making some coding videos again. Um, I, I figured I'll start with this series where I'm going to be solving some programming challenges basically live. Like, I'm not going to prepare anything in advance. I'll just solve them live on camera so that people who are new to coding can kind of get somewhat of an insight into how someone who's more experienced thinks about these kinds of problems. So I figured I would start with some problems called Project Euler, which usually deal with numbers and other mathematical concepts. Like you see here, there are problems with titles like multiples of 3 and 5, Fibonacci numbers, prime numbers, etc. And they start out pretty easy. I have a dark theme on right now, so you can see this. Let me turn that off here. They start out easy, but if I sort by difficulty, maybe the first few are the easiest level. Maybe I sort this way, yeah. So eventually they can get very difficult. So I guess the plan for now is to start going through some of the easy ones, and then maybe I can, depending on if I get any feedback, I can maybe do some of the harder ones as well. I'll turn the dark theme on again. So I made a GitHub repo here, which I'll link in the description of every video, where you can find all the code that I'm going to be writing. But for now, I'll just start with this first one here. And I have done this one before. I made a fresh Project Euler account, but it's been a very long time, so I didn't have these. I don't remember the solutions, so it will be I'll be going into this blind, essentially. Okay, so let me just read the problem statement. Okay, that seems simple enough. So I'm not gonna jump straight into solving them. I'll make some setup that'll make it, that'll just help us in the long run if we're gonna be solving many of these. So I'll start by making a directory here called Project Euler, and I'll open my code editor, which by the way is VS Code. In that new folder, Project Euler, and I will make a folder called, no, not a folder, a file called main.py. I'm also going to make a folder called output. And the reason I'm making this folder is because I know that all of the Project Euler questions require you to put in some kind of number as the answer. So I figured, rather than having something where I'm like only writing in one file and then like printing out the answer every time, I can keep track of all the answers to the things I've solved so far. We're making it so that every time I've solved one of the problems, I make a new like .txt file or something that has the correct file name and also the answer. So I'll just start by setting that up. Hopefully it won't take too long. So I'll make a function called solve, and it's gonna have two arguments: challenge number, which is an integer, and the answer, which I'm assuming is also an integer. We might have to change that later if some of the Project Euler questions don't need you to put an integer in here. And for now, all I'm going to do is print the answer like that. And we will, I forgot parentheses, colon, sorry. And the reason I put the print here so far is just because I want to test this. So then the way this would work, sorry about that, is we would make a new file, maybe call it 1.py. And then here we would do from main import solve. And then we do a bunch of shit to find out the answer. And then eventually maybe we found the answer to some challenge is 100. We can then say solve 100. And if I now run this 1.py file, oh, I forgot, it takes two parameters. That's correct. So say that was challenge number 1, like that. You can see it now prints 100. So it might seem a little contrived, why don't I just use the print function? But the reason is that eventually we want to make this thing a little bit more sophisticated. So that rather than just printing, it will make like a text file and everything. I won't bother with that now, but I'll do that eventually. So for now, let's just work on the first problem. So we want to find the sum of all the multiples of 3 or 5 below 1000. So my first inkling is that we're going to have some variable sum. I'm using, oh, let's not call it sum, let's call it s. Because sum is a reserved keyword in Python, similar to like, you couldn't call the variable for, because for is used for the for loop. So I'll call it uppercase s, and then I'll make a for loop for n in range, we'll go from 1 to 1001. That's just because there's a little quirk in Python where if you go up to, it starts on the first number and then it goes up to, but excluding the last number, which I can demonstrate real quick. If I go into a Python shell here, if I just type Python here, and then I say something like for I in range 110, print I, you'll see it does print the 1, but it doesn't do the 10 because it stops 1 before it gets to the end. So it doesn't include the last one. So here, in the in the challenge statement, problem statement, whatever, we're going from all the multiples of 3 or 5 below 1000. So we want to go up to 1001. Okay, and then we're going to have if something, I'll put that something in later. So if, essentially that's if it's a multiple of 3 or a multiple of 5. Yeah. So if it's that, then add it to the sum n. And then at the end, we will have the sum, and we can just do solve s. So now what we put in here, well, we want to check if it's a multiple of 3 or a multiple of 5. So first, check if it's a multiple of 3. That would be n percent 3 equals 0. So this is taking the remainder of n divided by 3 and checking if that is equal to 0. And if that's equal to 0, then it must be a multiple of 3. And then we can say or n percent 3, sorry, n percent 5 is 0. So now it's saying if, so the way this works is this or in Python is actually more like an and or. So this is, so at first it's going to look, is it divisible by 3? If yes, it immediately goes and executes this line. If it's not divisible by 3, then it looks at this, and if that's true, it goes to this line. But if this one is not true, and it goes to this one, and this one is also not true, then it's not going to do this. So that should be it pretty much. If I run this now, we should get answer. I keep forgetting. We need to put 1 here. So right now the 1 isn't actually doing anything in this solve function, but it will eventually. When we make something a little bit more sophisticated, it's going to create like a text file, which maybe will be called like 1.text. Then we're going to need this parameter to know what to call the text file. So I'm just putting it in now for the future. So it'll be solve 1s. So it gives us this, which we can now copy and paste and see if we get the right answer. Whoops. Sorry, it looks like it's incorrect. Huh. Okay. Oh, I think I know. Yeah, so it says below 1000, which means not including 1000. And 1000 actually happens to be a multiple of 5. So we need to actually put 1000 here, because we don't want to include 1000. So you need to read the, or I guess I need to read the problem statements more carefully. So hopefully it'll be right now. Let's see. I think usually when it takes a while to load, that means it's correct. Yeah, all right, so it's correct. So that was problem 1. I think I'll stop the video here. I hope that was useful.